the World Trade Organization, the WTO. Today's global marketplace is incredibly complex with thousands of aspects to consider. Many of the goods you eat, wear, drive, or live in may be, in part, made possible by the agreements and rules that the WTO has established. The WTO is a global organisation made up of 164 member countries and 23 observer governments, and its purpose is to help countries and producers deal fairly and smoothly with each other across international borders. It mainly does this through WTO agreements which are negotiated and signed by the trading nations of the world. These documents act as contracts that provide the legal framework and agreements for conducting trade amongst its member countries. So how did we get to the WTO? Well, in 1948, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, the GATT, was established to regulate world trade. It was created as a means to boost economic recovery after the Second World War by reducing or eliminating trade tariffs, quotas, and subsidies. Two key principles of GATT are non-discrimination, we can't play favourites when trading, and national treatment. We must give our members the same treatment as our own nationally. In other words, treating imported goods the same as we treat our domestic goods. The result is reduced costs of production and reduced prices of finished goods and services, and ultimately a lower cost of living and a higher standard of living. However, in the 1980s, as a result of world economics becoming more global and trading of commodities increasing, it became obvious that the GATT, on its own, wasn't enough in meeting the important challenges that were arising through increased trade, like how to deal with pests and diseases crossing borders, how to ensure products are safe for consumers to use and for them to eat. As a result of all this, in 1986, the GATT conference had the biggest trading negotiation on record and is known as the Uruguay Round. One of the final accomplishments of the round was the creation of the WTO, which happened officially in 1995.
117 governments involved have achieved an extraordinary success. We have achieved something together, I think, of considerable moment. With your approval, therefore, I gavel the Uruguay round as concluded.
And as part of its creation, those key GATT principles of non-discrimination and national treatment were incorporated. So the key WTO agreements that are important to us here at MPI are the GATT, yep, it's now a part of WTO, the agreement on the application of sanitary and phytosanitary measures, also known as the SPS agreement, the agreement on agriculture, and the agreement on the technical barriers to trade, the TBT agreement. But why are these so important to New Zealand? Well, they help us trade smoothly by stimulating economic growth through trade, by providing a forum for us to negotiate trade liberalising agreements, by giving smaller countries like ours a voice in those important trade rules discussions, and by assisting trade by providing a place where we can go to discuss trade issues we may face with other countries. And all this is made possible by the WTO providing a solid legal framework which ensures our trade can flow as smoothly, predictably and freely as possible. And that's WTO in a nutshell.